They say the common onion is one of the easiest crops to grow for beginners.
Honestly though, I have to respectfully disagree. Sort of.
Follow their requirements like a recipe, don't stray too far from the procedures, and onions won't give you too much trouble.
In fact, done right, these guys can be crazy prolific and you could be swimming in onions every summer.
The issue is, onions are a long crop, and one with specific needs. Coupled together, and this can result in some pretty frustrating outcomes.
So today, I'll walk you through all the ins and outs of growing bulb onions in containers. Every tip you could possibly need to have massive harvests every summer. I know that we said we have to be diligent with the procedure to successfully grow onions, but actually there's 3 different ways to plant these guys. We'll cover each of them in just a second, but first, let's look at the universal requirements of all onions, regardless of how you plant them.
Like most crops, it all starts with the soil. Onions grow best in a loose, rich, well-drained soil with medium to high organic content, constant moisture, and a neutral to slightly acidic pH. Yes, the harvestable bulb, which are actually a modified set of leaves, does grow right near the surface. But the long, straight, stringy roots, kind of like garlic but even longer, reach quite far down searching for that moisture and of course those nutrients.
Speaking of those nutrients, onions really are moderate to heavy feeders, and growing them in poor soils is going to give you poor results.
Initially, we feed our young onions a balanced NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium blend just to get them going. Right when they sprout their 3rd blade. About 3 weeks after that, and every subsequent 3 weeks moving forward, we feed them a heavy nitrogen dose. You see, onion bulbs are not roots or flowers, nor are they stimulated by any increase in phosphorus or potassium. Made purely of modified leaves, nitrogen is where it's at.
Important note though, all feeding and watering needs to stop at least 3 to 4 weeks before you intend to harvest. If you want to store onions with the longest lifespan, you gotta stop feeding and watering by this date. It's vital.
Like all alliums, onions are a full sun crop, requiring 6+ hours a day of full direct sunlight. Growing them in containers makes this easy, and we can just move our onions around to where the sun is. The wrong location, or shading out by adjacent crops, is gonna yield poor results every time.
Okay, with their universal requirements all set, let's get planting and go over the specific ways to grow the best onions. Like we said, there's 3 ways to plant your onions: seeds, starts, or sets. By far my favorite way is from starts, but let's begin with direct seeding first.
Now, before we can plant, even direct seeding, we have to realize that there are 3 types or categories of onions to grow, all based on where you live. We have to make sure to pick the right one for our region, or it's simply not going to work. Basically, onions are categorized by the day length, which stimulates their bulb production. Meaning, as soon as the day reaches a certain number of hours in length, the onion plant switches from leaf and foliage growth to bulb formation. Long day onions begin to set their bulbs when the day length reaches 14 to 16 hours long. Short day onions, however, are going to begin to bulb up when that day length reaches 10 to 12 hours. And as you can probably guess, the intermediate ones are somewhere in between. Choosing the right onion for your climate and your area is going to dictate how well your plants bulb up, as will the timing in which you plant them.
And that timing of when to plant your onions is fully dictated on what variety you choose, as well as what zone you're growing in.
Some varieties are planted right before winter, like we do with our garlic, while others are planted in the spring, much like most of our other crops. Overwintering ones are usually labeled as such, but always be aware of what type of onion you're growing.
Here in Canada, I've never had much success with the overwintering onions, despite growing a ton of garlic. So I've always just planted my onions in the spring for a late summer harvest. Speaking of that planting, let's get into it.
Like we said, there's 3 different ways to plant your onions: seeds, starts, and sets. Let's start with those seeds. Onion seeds are small, black, irregularly shaped kernels that are anything if unassuming. Direct seeding them is super easy. Grabbing your pot or container of choice, again, 1 onion plant per gallon, fill it up right near to the top with some organic potting mix. Pack it down firmly, and we now have a landing pad for our onion seeds. Watering it first is optional, but it does create the ideal environment for seed germination, and it's much easier to water now than after we seed it. These guys are sown shallow, no more than 1/4 inch deep. Onion plants eventually need 4 to 6 inches of spacing between each other, and you can do that right away when you're seeding, or you can seed them heavy like you do carrots and then thin them after they sprout. Onion seeds have a notoriously short shelf life, so don't rely on 100% germination. Speaking of that germination, in the cooler days of spring, onions can take up to 2 weeks to sprout. And when they do first come up, they just look like little blades of grass and are easily missed, so be aware of that. As we mentioned, if you've sown your onion seeds heavy, wait till they're about 1 inch high and thin them to the strongest individuals. Remember, we want to strive for that 4 to 6 inch spacing between each plant to allow them to bulb up to maximum size. Here's an example of 2 that were not spaced properly and are growing side by side. Easily 40 to 50% smaller than all of the other bulbs in this pot.
Speaking of those pots, in this case fabric grow bags, you want to grow about 1 onion per 1 gallon of soil volume. The depth doesn't really matter as long as you have at least 6 inches.
Smaller varieties you can pack more in, yes, just use your best judgment. Keep the soil moist but never soggy, and again, always in that full sun location. First feeding is 3 weeks after sprouting with a balanced mixture, and then again every 3 weeks after that with a nitrogen high dose. Stop all watering and feeding 3 to 4 weeks before you intend to harvest, and that's growing onions from seed in a nutshell. All in all, this is going to take you 90 to upwards of 150 days seed to harvest.
Okay, as fun as growing from seed is, my favorite way to plant onions is from starter plants.
You can make your own onion starters at home or simply buy them from the store in the spring. Either way, pre-sprouted and pre-grown onions are going to give you a massive head start and can shave upwards of 4 to 6 weeks off of your growing time. Planted in the early spring for the long day types, I start my onion seeds in little cell type trays or containers and then move them on once they get 3 to 4 medium-sized blades and the outside temperatures have reached 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Grown indoors, they germinate much faster in the warmer conditions and put on substantial size much quicker in this ideal environment. Transplanting is easy, and we can observe that ideal 4 to 6 inch spacing right away. Plant them to the existing depth that they're already at. Easy stuff. Within about a week, they'll have taken, and they can get their first balanced fertilizing just like we did with the direct seeded ones. After that, watering, feeding, and then the harvesting is identical.
And this brings us to our third and final way to plant onions, by far the easiest method, and that's to use onion sets.
These guys look like miniature onions, and essentially they are. Onion sets are pre-sprouted, pre-grown onions that are sent into a dormant state, often in the previous season. Sold dry and rootless, you can find them at the store in both the spring and the fall, and they may or may not have already sprouted. Onion sets come in these breathable bags, and they should be planted soon after buying. Do note, if any of the bulbs are squishy, don't bother planting them, they've expired.
By far the easiest way to grow onions, planting them in moist soil reanimates them, and then you're on your way.
Plant them no more than a ½ inch deep, again at that 4 to 6 inch spacing. Lightly mulch, thoroughly water, and under normal spring conditions, your onion set should sprout in about a week. With most of the hard work already done, onions grown from sets are going to be ready for harvest usually in less than 2 months. Truly, it's easy beyond belief.
Not to be a Debbie Downer though, but there are a few drawbacks when you're growing onions from sets.
Onion sets can be expensive, and the selection offered is often quite poor, paling in comparison to what you can get when you're growing from seed. Also, as a biennial plant, onion sets are often tricked into thinking that it's their second year of growth, and truthfully, it often is. Biennials, as their name implies, go to flower in their second year. And while onion flowers are quite striking, this is not something we want them to do.
Because once an onion enters a flowering cycle, it signals the rest of the plant, including that bulb, to stop growing.
Once you see those flowers, you might as well pull the plant up and kiss those mega harvests goodbye. With onion sets already being a year old, or at least sometimes tricked into thinking they can be notorious for this. It doesn't always happen, but it is something to be aware of. There we go. 3 ways to plant your container onions. Definitely something for everyone here. But what about those harvests? Yes, we know we need to stop watering and feeding about 3 weeks before we intend to pull them, but what then?
Well, truthfully, onions can be harvested at any time. The shoots are completely edible, and the young bulbs are unbelievably tasty.
However, harvesting your onions for long-term storage is a different story. The rule of thumb is for max longevity, bulb onions are ready to be harvested when their tops fall over and begin to turn yellow or brown. Like clockwork, when they're ready to be harvested, your onions will begin to bend and break and topple over right at the neck. This is because the bulbs are pulling all of the water, carbs, and sugar out of those leaves, and once they topple over from lack of turgidity, you know that the bulbs are ready. The actual harvesting is super easy. Just make sure to do it on a dry day, and also to stop that watering and feeding at least 3 to 4 weeks prior. Like most alliums, onions tend to grow right at or near the surface. Loosen the soil around the bulb to make pulling them up much easier. Brush off any of the excess dirt, and that's it. The bulb is harvested. Don't wash them, don't cut off the leaves, and don't trim those roots just yet. Much like we do with our garlic, hang your onions up, bulb side down, for about 2 to 4 weeks in a dry place. After that, you can cut those leaves down to about 1 inch and trim off those roots right up flush with the bulb. Store your onions in a cool, dark place for up to 4 to 6 months, some varieties even up to a year.
And with those varieties, picking the right one really is half the battle when you're growing onions. Having said that, we did cover a lot of other things today too, so let's recap those main points to make sure that we got them all.
Onions are an amazing crop, and they're as versatile in the garden as they are in the kitchen.
Hopefully today I've shown you the way to unlimited container onions and that your future harvests are as big as they possibly can be. Hey, as always, happy growing guys, and I'll see you soon.